No, all these video topics that we do, they're literally, I make bullet points when I'm on client trips because I feel like that, or middle of the night sometimes. Sometimes Dylan and I are talking and a good topic will come up, but a lot of times these clients have really good questions and things come up. And I wanted to talk about this as a sensitive subject because why not help your neighbors? Is this a competition between you and your neighbor? And I want to point out it's not a competition. I want to say that right off the bat, but it is. And I want to read this. I want to read a text from a neighbor. I won't even tell you what state. Just says, don't feel bad. That's the way it goes. And Dylan has this, he'll share the text chain. Don't feel bad. That's the way it goes. After hunting this for 3 years now, there's definitely a recurring pattern I've never seen anywhere else. I have bucks all through October here, but seems like November 1st, they suck over to your farm and we shoot them. Now, obviously we want to shoot the big bucks in the area. I also, if we know the neighbors, say Chad, one of our neighbors over here, Jeremy, I want them to shoot big bucks. I want them to have a great hunt. But it is a competition to a point because we do want to shoot the best bucks in the area. And I grade myself and how I do on if I'm shooting those target bucks at a high percentage over a 10-year period in anywhere I hunt. Doesn't matter if I'm on public land, private land, what state I'm in. If I'm not shooting the majority of my bucks, the majority of the big bucks in the area, then I think I'm a failure. And it's not that I don't want my neighbors to have a good hunt. It's just that that's how I'm grading myself. I'm grading my habitat work, my hunting work, the decisions I make, decisions I make for habitat and hunting. So think about that. That neighbor text is not the only one. We had another one, and it went something along the lines to another person that we're having a bad year this year, that Sturgis's food plot program is sucking all the deer off our farm, and we've had a terrible season. We're just not seeing the deer that we used to. And it was the flip from who used to hunt the land because they were pushing the deer to them every time they went in and hunted. And because of their habitat practices, they weren't coming back. And that was a different story too. And then another farm we have, our farm is very diminutive in size compared to theirs, but we shoot the majority of the target bucks every single year. Sometimes the target bucks we shoot, they haven't even had on camera, and that was one of those this year. And it's because we do things different. We're in the 3% club. Last week, I was in Ohio for clients. I had 7 clients in 8 days after going to the ATA. It's a long trip, but I love this stuff. And I had a client. Before you say I'm too competitive and I don't care about other people, I want to explain even further. I had a client and he had a neighbor there. And the 2 neighbors want to work together because they're good friends and they're good people. I can fully appreciate that. I like that. And so imagine this property up here and this property down here, not the exact shapes. And they wanted to combine food sources, do similar things across this border so that they could both take advantage of that. It sounds really cool, but typically that's not the best way to manage. I want this neighbor to develop a core area where there's bucks in this area. I want this neighbor to develop, and this was a little bit different, but I want them to develop a core area of bucks. In those areas right there, they use this middle for access, different layout than a lot of properties I go to. Bottom line, if you look at it, I want them to have their own core area, them to have their own core area, because mature bucks only move, on average, depending on the area, 200 to 400 yards during daylight the entire season. Straight line, from their afternoon food source to their bedding area. So if you manage that way, it's very easy to control 95% of a buck's daylight core area. He expresses 95% of his actual home range after dark. You're only trying to control 5%, which is 95% of his daylight movement. If that 95% of his daylight movement is on your neighbors because you put food right up against the border, then you're sharing bucks. When you're sharing bucks, you hurt the number of overall potential bucks you can have in the area. I want this person right here to have separate movements coming into separate food sources, so they have a nucleus of bucks that they control during the daylight. And I want this person to do the same, so there's very little overlap. Because again, it goes back to that 200 to 400 yards, which is greater in big woods, smaller in big ag. I've seen northern Ohio, Sandusky area, where there's hardly a tree for every 2 miles, where bucks will hold from afternoon food source to their bedding area 100 yards because they have to. You know, again, getting back to the easiest properties to manage are those surrounded by ag fields, because you have a captive herd. They don't have any other choice for cover. So in that case, you can actually improve buck numbers when you're using your resources to build a herd over here and this person's over here. You're offering bucks different choice and separation. Ideally, those 2 neighbors right there. And I talked to them about access. I actually helped the neighbor out when they were there, because I talked about, well, you access on this side to stands, you access around here, and then this person accesses through here, around from here, different access. So this person has a core area that they access, this person does too. Different buck movements, they're laid out completely different. You're using adjoining access maybe, meaning that this person's accessing on their land right next to where this person accesses on their land, and that way you're separating those 2 buck herds. So over time, I expect there to be overlap with bucks, but there's going to be a percentage of bucks that they always see that these people don't. If they're both doing a good job, it'll be fairly equal. We have that situation here across the fields. We have a neighbor named Jeremy. He has different bucks. In fact, they shot a really cool one this year we'd never seen. With all the cameras, we have never seen it. Another neighbor, Chad, further than that, he has bucks every year we never see, and vice versa. That's the way it's supposed to be. And when you do that, we have the buck triangle. And the buck triangle is something I teach, something I recognize, and I look at. This is the number of bucks right here. This is the age of bucks vertical. So age of bucks vertical, number of bucks horizontal. As the number of bucks increase, so does the age of bucks. It increases. So when they're working on holding bucks on their land and you're working on holding bucks on your land, and they're 2 different movements, what happens to the overall neighborhood? You increase the number of bucks. When you increase the number of bucks, you improve the entire neighborhood, not just one parcel, not sharing bucks. So it goes back to this original text. When someone is not managing the habitat at its highest level, when someone's not hunting at its highest level, then you're expecting to share bucks. And the person that is in that 3% club in the neighborhood is always going to shoot those target bucks. Or not always, 80% of the time over a 10-year period, because you're not building separate buck herds. And I see that over and over again. Dealt with it with 3 neighbors around our current properties. And we dealt with it in the UP of Michigan when public land hunters were nearby. I had someone that hunted over 30 years next to me on public land about 300 yards away. He's shooting 1 1.5-year-old 5-point, the 10th day of deer season, gun season, right before dark, telling me that there's no bucks, that wolves have killed all the deer, sugar beaters, those from down below the bridge, trolls below the bridge, have killed all the does, too many doe permits. When we had pictures of 17 different bucks, I passed up 11 and shot 2 all around him. Because he's hunting different, and he's not looking at this as, I want to go hunt this separate buck herd over here. And this is on public land, let alone on private land where you have the ability to build, hold, increase the number of bucks, and look at separate deer movements. It's not a competition. And for those of you who say, well, why don't you go over to your neighbor and help them? I'm not going to go over to a neighbor and say, you need to do this. They can watch the videos. I'm an open book. My strategies, I want to help. If they come to me and say, hey, can you help me do this at a higher level? I'm happy to. Because then if they're building bucks over there, we're building bucks over here, let the person with the best hunting style reap the rewards. But I want to see all my neighbors doing that, managing well, because it helps the entire neighborhood. I had one time a very selfish client. We had some neighbors that followed us around. on our trip. We had to wade through water, it's often over our knee boots, the entire 40 acres. And he kept telling me, I don't want them here. I don't want you to tell them what we do. And I don't want them, to know what your background is, who you are, where you came from. Of course, we get back to the vehicles. Hey, you guys want to come over for a old fashioned? Come over for a drink. So we're going over there, and well, where'd you guys meet? My client says, well, we met online. A couple dudes meeting online, coming over, just hanging out. Well, what'd you meet online for? Well, we like to hunt together. I mean, I'm thinking this is like we're on Match.com, we were put together. It sounded weird, starting to sound weird. He didn't not want me in any way for them to improve their parcel. They had all the ag land. They could have planted all the food plots. He was having to carve out in areas in the water, basically, food plots, and had all the cover. It would have been a dream if they would have done it right. They both would have benefited. And again, it's not a competition. It's about helping each other do it the right way. And I hope this makes sense. So if you follow the concepts we teach on this channel, whether it's food plotting concepts or strategies, they're tried and true wherever we've used them, even applying to public land. And this is a good one right here. I like this topic. I liked having the neighbor over on the property the other day. And it was the same on, oh man, now I think back, one of my first clients in the trip, I had two neighbors. Can't believe I remember this. Had two neighbors on both sides. And again, you guys do your own thing, this whole neighborhood's going to jack up. And they already had 180 to 200 inch deer in the area. Imagine if they push the age structure up another half year on average or another 1 year on average. So instead of targeting 3 to 5 year old bucks and seeing those regularly, all of a sudden it jumps up to 4 to 6. And they start getting those 5 and 6, because if you have a few 4-year-olds, that means you're going to have an occasional 5 or 6 year old. If you have a few 3-year-olds, you're going to have an occasional 4-year-old or 5-year-old. As you push that age up, it just pushes your potential up. In a lot of areas where genetics and really good growth, like Southeast Ohio, come to play, then man, that next year, and if you do it right, oh my gosh, the bucks that you can have on your property. I often have way higher expectations for my clients than they do, because I've seen it. I've seen what can happen when you just push it one more year by working on your own land, being a good neighbor if they ask. I'll help anybody if they ask, because in the end, it helps the entire neighborhood. And I hope that makes sense. It's not a competition. It's about looking at your land, using your resources to help your own property. And for that, working on each other's together. That's awesome. We share trail cam photos around here. I love it. And even this case right here, I was expressing that I felt bad. Bucks that we had taken out, this person wasn't even going to come and hunt anymore because those are the only two he was seeing. So I said, I feel bad. We have cameras out. We'll let you know if we see anything else. We're still expecting a couple to come in. If we see them, we'll let you know. And he said he'd let us know if he saw, any bucks on his end, but he didn't even want to come back and hunt. And I felt bad. And that's the text he gave me there. And I felt bad too, because for one, I think it sucks he's not coming back to hunt. He's done hunting because we shot a couple. You don't want that. At the same time, I want to see that he has mature bucks that we don't even know about, because then there's always that possibility they might come over to our land. And that means the neighborhood is better for it. And if you manage this way and you look at it as helping your neighbor, yeah, it's friendly competition. But at the same time, you can work together to explode the entire neighborhood by being competitive, not competitive, but really looking at your lands separately and doing your best through the concepts we teach on this channel. Everyone, thanks for watching to the end of the video. I really want you to check out whitetailhabitatsolutions.com, Pure Wildlife Blends. There's so much we have to offer you. If you never buy anything from us or hire us to come to your land, that's okay. We're still going to be putting out all this free content to try to help you out. I want to put a smile on your face. I want you to have a great hunt. But from our food plot seed blends, to books, to web classes, to hiring us, we have lots of stuff to offer on whitetailhabitatsolutions.com and Pure Wildlife Blends. Make sure you check it out. The links are in the description.